Okay, we are live. And we are just a couple minutes early, so I'm going to give some people some time to sign on and log in. Okay, great. I see people coming in. That's great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name's Amanda Kreider, and I'm the Artistic Director of IlluminArts. We are a concert series in Miami, Florida, and our tagline is Music and Art in Unison, Concerts in a New Light. We collaborate with museums and galleries around the city to present site-specific, curated programs of music. And I am so excited to be with you tonight to introduce you to two incredible artists who are going to be with us helping me produce an opera in the fall, IlluminArts' first chamber opera. And this was a production that was supposed to be originally in May 2020. We first postponed it until October of 2020, and now it's actually happening in October of 2021. And we're so excited. It is Benjamin Britten's The Turn of the Screw at Vizcaya Museum and Gardens. And we're so thrilled to have Vizcaya as our host for this production. It's the perfect place for it. So our two guests tonight are the conductor and director of The Turn of the Screw. First, I'll start by introducing Laine Rettmer. She is our incredible director. Laine and I'm going to say, met through a friend when I was singing an opera in Boston and New York. Laine is a North American visual artist and opera director. Their work has been shown at MoMA Public, the Museum of Fine Art Boston, the Boston Independent Film Festival, NADA New York, the Area Gallery, and many, many others. Her opera productions have been praised as wickedly smart and devastatingly funny by the New York Times, and not only profound, but also shattering by the Observer. Laine has worked a lot with Loft Opera in New York and won prizes and recognition for her work there. Also New York City Opera, Guerrilla Opera, and On-Site Opera. Laine received grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and the MAP Fund Alliance, and is also on the faculty of the Rhode Island School of Design. So happy to have you here, Laine. And she's a little frozen, but she'll come back. She'll come back. There she is.
I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks, Laine. Great. And
I'm super happy to be here. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for that introduction.
Thanks. And Jacomo Bairos is a dear friend, also lives here in Miami, but is currently in Amarillo, Texas right now. And Jacomo has been described in the press as thrilling, inspirational, and world-class, which I have to agree with all three descriptors. Yes. He has worked with the Boston Pops, San Francisco, National, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Atlanta, Iceland, and Singapore symphonies. He is the founder and artistic director of New Deco Ensemble, who will be our ensemble for this production of Turn of the Screw, which I'm so thrilled about. And he is now in his final season as artistic director at Amarillo Symphony. And he's a graduate of the Juilliard School. Jacomo, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate that, Amanda. So sweet.
Sure. And Jacomo is having to run to a rehearsal in 25 minutes. So I'm going to start off with Jacomo tonight. And can you tell us a little bit more, like where you're from, how you got your start in music?
Sure. I was originally born in Lisbon, Portugal, but my mom moved to the States when I was 4 years old down to South Florida, Homestead. I'm a native of South Florida, and just fell into music quite early when I was in middle school. I had a wonderful band director, took me under her wing and guided me and inspired me. I was playing in the jazz band and the concert band and the marching band back when middle schools had multiple bands. And I remember I was 12 years old and I went and saw the Canadian Brass. They did a concert in my little town of Homestead. They were on a big tour. And I remember looking up at the ensemble on stage, and I was sitting in the chairs, and they were playing this amazing brass music, and they sounded so incredible. And this tuba player was standing up, holding his tuba, kind of dancing around the stage, and playing this amazing music, stuff I never heard the tuba do or could do. And he was talking and telling jokes to the audience. He had everybody in the palm of his hand. And I just remember, I want to be that guy. You know, I just was so inspired. And I ran home right away. And I told my mom, I want to be a professional musician. I was 12 years old. And she's like, well, okay. You know, she was like always fostering my interests and was very supportive and went out and bought me a bunch of recordings of like, you know, Canadian Brass and the Boston Pops. And from then on, I just was always dedicated and really wanted to be in music. And that led to many other things, but that was a pivotal moment. So it was quite early when I knew I wanted to do this for a living. And to those of you who don't know, I was a professional tuba player before, and I did go to Juilliard for the tuba and had jobs around the world. And my last job was with the Singapore Symphony before I retired as a musician, as I like to joke with my friends, and became a conductor and moved back to the States to pursue that career.
Awesome. And how did you fall into conducting?
Conducting, interestingly enough, was something I had always had an itch for. You know, when I was even at Juilliard and even in high school, I just found something fascinating about that role between the conductor and the musicians. There was something magical and mystical. There was some sort of interspecies communication that happened between the eyes and the body and, you know, without words. And I just was always like, how in the world is a person up on the podium moving their arms and making gestures and giving facial expressions and just drawing out this amazing sound from all these people? Yes, we have architecture in front of us. We have notes and we have a score, we have time and rhythm, but to get an orchestra to sound quite amazing takes something very magical and special. And I just curious. I just was like, what is that? How does that happen? So I always had the itch to want to do it. And I started trying it a little bit in Singapore, and I had a great opportunity. I spoke to the Singapore Symphony Brass at the time, and I said, hey, I had this crazy idea to do a Latin pops program in Singapore. And at the time, Latin music was all the rage in Asia. And I had a friend in Miami, Nestor Torres, who's a jazz flutist, a famous jazz flutist. And he had all these orchestra charts, and he had a following in Singapore, randomly enough. And I presented it to the symphony and said, hey, can I do this? And they said, sure, but you got to go raise $50,000 to do it. And I was like, okay. So I went out to some organizations and I pulled the money together rather quickly because people thought the idea was cool. We put on a concert and the rest was history. I had no idea what I was doing. I was flailing around like a wild banshee up on stage, but the musicians kind of, you know, they supported it and they supported me, and the concerts went well. We sold out, and then other orchestras around Asia started calling me. I got calls from the Hong Kong Philharmonic, the Malaysia Philharmonic. They saw the videos. They were like, wow, what is this? This is cool. And that ultimately led to me going to a master class in the Czech Republic to study with a very famous teacher. And he just pulled me aside one day and said, hey, there's something in you. I don't know what it is exactly, but you have a certain energy for this, a certain passion for it. And if you would like, I'd love to bring you into my studio. You'd have to go back to school and start over, but I think you have the possibility to be a career, to have a career as a conductor. So if you're willing to take the leap of faith and join me, I'll teach you. And I was like, okay, I didn't come here to think I was going to become a conductor. I just wanted to get a little bit better at what I was doing, but then why not go big or go home? And it was always a dream. And I, you know, as much as I love playing an orchestra, I just felt it was time for doing stuff that I felt maximized my talents and potential. I wasn't really doing that yet. I mean, I love the tuba and I love musicians, and I was always doing all these extra things anyway, but it just hit me in that moment that, you know, you got one life to live. You get these choices every now and then. These big opportunities come by. I'm sure you guys can resonate with them, and people listening as well. Like, you don't get that many opportunities in life where something big comes along. And he was a famous teacher, and I trusted him. And I just said, you know what? I talked to my mom, and she's like, you got to do it. And I was like, let's go. Let's just go for it. So I quit my job in Singapore. I had just signed a new contract too. It was crazy. I quit my job in Singapore, and they graciously let me go and went right back to school and dove face first into the scores and started learning about Mozart and Beethoven and Bach, composers I never played as a tuba player. So it was a second education. Went back to school in my early 30s, and it was like, okay, here we go. So
wow. Yeah, that's great. And I remember the first time we met, which I'm not sure you remember, but it was when you were working as an assistant conductor in North Carolina. I
Yes.
came to sing as a soloist, and we struck up a conversation, and you said you were from Homestead, and I was like, really? I had just moved to Miami full time, and then eventually you moved back to Miami and started New Deco Ensemble. So tell us a little bit about New Deco.
New Deco is Miami's 21st century genre-bending chamber orchestra. My partner and I, Sam Hyken, my musical partner, he's also the co-founder and artistic director along with me. He's also actually CEO as well. He and I played in the Singapore Symphony together, and we just would always talk about what is the orchestra of the future? What is the symphonic music of the future? What is something that's going to drive this orchestral institution that we loved so much into the future, because we felt like at the time orchestras were sort of losing their footing of relevancy. And we just would ask each other questions. We'd always have these big philosophical debates about like, what is the future of classical music? And so when we got to Miami, or at least when I came back to the States, he actually joined the New World Symphony, and I would come home and visit my parents, and I'd hang out with them, and we would just talk about like Miami, and the scene was growing and it was culturally getting more diverse, and Hamstart came, and all these like great cultural institutions were really kind of blowing up, and the New World Center was opening, and it just was a lot of things happening, and we felt like one thing that was missing was a contemporary music ensemble. And most great cities, New York, LA, even Chicago, have contemporary music ensembles, sometimes even multiple ones. So we just felt like there was nothing like that in Miami, and there should be. And if we don't do it, someone else is going to do it soon. Except we wanted to make it like very Miami. We wanted it to have a very special vibe that spoke to our community. So not only did we have a passion for new music and a passion for the musicians in the city and our friends who were, freelancers, we wanted to give them something really interesting and new to do. We also wanted to create a hook, a place where people can come together and experience maybe something they haven't heard before. We wanted people who loved classical music to come in and hear us reimagine people like Daft Punk and the Police, and we wanted people who didn't know about living composers to hear new composers in their music and their voice and their styles. We wanted to collaborate with artists that you don't normally see in the concert hall. We just thought those were all just interesting ideas to do. And it's funny, our very first concert, we sort of fell into this formula that ended up working out really well for us, because we combined both new music by living composers with a reimagining of Daft Punk, and we collaborated with a local artist, and Sam arranged these great charts with Afro Beta, who I'm sure you know and many people in Miami know. Amazing duo, electronic duo. And people just really resonated with it. And they told us, oh my God, you guys need to have a season. You need to do more concerts. And we were just like, okay. And we loved what we were doing. And it was like this huge, heavy lift to get it off the ground. But when we saw the reaction of the audiences and saw that there was like this real palpable energy for high quality music, regardless if it's classical or new or contemporary or reimagined, just people really enjoyed quality. We just knew we wanted to stick with it. And so one of the great pieces of advice we got when we didn't know what we were going to do next was like, just keep producing quality. And that's how we really got off the ground, is continue to just, be just straightforward with our vision, not be unapologetic, super authentic, super intentional. And now here we are going into our last concert of our 6th season. And it's been a pretty exciting, fun ride and journey, which you've been a part of, and you know about all the stuff we're doing. So, and I really resonate with IlluminArts, because you're a startup too. You had a vision, you had something you wanted to create, and you had something that you felt was needed in Miami, and you found your niche. And I always feel like if you're really authentic and true to yourself, you're going to find an audience. Whether it's 20 people or 20 million people, you're going to find an audience. There's an audience for everything. And as long as you really stay true to who you are and the things you believe in, at the highest quality as always, then you can find your own niche, you can find your own success. And luckily Miami was hungry for it, and we have the New World Symphony, we have other orchestras, we have the opera. It was really great institutions in Miami, but there was no new music ensemble. So we feel really grateful that Miami was like fertile ground to get this off.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember because IlluminArts and New Deco are almost the same age. We're about to go into our 8th season, and you guys are going to go into your 7th. And I remember meeting with Sam right when we were starting off, and we were both like, what are you doing? What are you doing? How are you starting off?
Yeah.
You guys took a different path than I did. You had everything laid out, your 501c3, everything before you started. And I was just like, nope, let's make art. Let's just go out and make art. I'll figure out the rest later. But it's
Yeah.
been great to like watch your growth. The New Deco Ensemble's growth over these last 7 years is so incredible. And for everyone listening or tuning in tonight, if you haven't gone to a New Deco concert, please check them out. They are incredible, and you'll get to hear some of the players in the orchestra of The Turn of the Screw. It's 13 of the players, and we're so thrilled to have them as the orchestra for this. There's so much to cover, Giacomo. Let's see. Tell us about some of your most memorable performances. If you could pick like one or two in your career that have been most memorable.
Well, it's funny. We were talking about New Deco in the start of it. I think that first concert was something magical. I remember the first rehearsal even in the room when we got together to make a video and take pictures and just figure out what we were doing. There was an energy, and I had gone through a big rough patch. Look at the cat.
I know. I'm just like, I'm just going to carefully
awesome.
pass them through the screen.
Cat just flew through the screen.
I love it.
Like
I love
just
it.
a flying cat. It was nice. That was a beautiful cat, actually.
Yeah.
She should be part of Turns Group. But yeah, no, you know, we did this concert, and I think because it was a heavy lift to get it off the ground and starting something from scratch, and really like to take something that was an idea and then to see it go through into like a really tangible thing was so incredibly rewarding. And you know, we do these concerts and they're amazing and just so much fun and we appreciate them. But that first concert, there was something really, really special about that concert. Just saying, you know what, if you really just don't give up and you drive and you hustle and you just go for it and you make something, you know, you can get something off the ground. So I think that was a really special moment for me. And then the other special moment I think was something you know a lot about. You know, I told you when I was a kid, my mom went out and bought me the CDs of Canadian Brass and the Boston Pops. So I just listened to the Boston Pops when I was a kid all the time.
Yeah.
And I had all these CDs. I thought that's what an orchestra was supposed to be. I didn't know orchestras only, you know, well, I didn't know mostly orchestras did Beethoven and classics and Mozart and Brahms. You know, I love that too. But you know, my ears were full of the Boston Pops, which had movie music, classics, Spanish music, dance music, all the stuff. So I was like really versed in all these styles. And it was a dream of mine to actually play in the Boston Pops as a tuba player. I didn't think I'd ever conduct them, but I was like, you know, I would love to play in the Boston Pops. In fact, I was telling one of my friends in ninth grade, I just told the story the other day. One of my best friends, who's our treasurer for or CFO for New Deco, Dan Baltigar, I told him like in the ninth grade in science class, he's like, so what do you want to do with your life? And I turned around and said, I'm going to play Boston Pops. I'm going to do that. And he's like, well, how much money? Like, you know, like he's asking because he's the money guy, right? And I was like, well, I don't know. I'm sure it's a lot. It's probably a lot of money, but I'm going to play in the Boston Pops. And okay, well, lo and behold, the Boston Symphony, which is also the Boston Pops, had a tuba audition. And I went and auditioned. And you know, I feel pretty good about who I was as a tuba player. I went to Juilliard. I played in the New York Philharmonic, Chicago Symphony. I toured with Cincinnati. I mean, I felt like I had a nice career. I played like 3 minutes, maybe. I played like half a page of a solo and like two excerpts, and I get the old next. And I was like devastated. I was like, oh, I'm here in Boston. The hall was so beautiful. It sounded so great. And I just was like, I wasn't their cup of tea. They just kicked me out literally within 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. Well, you know, I didn't get my dream to play in the Boston Pops, but I think because of New Deco and our success in building it up, and then some of the things I've gotten to do with all these wonderful orchestras, the brass there at the Boston Pops noticed and invited me to conduct a concert there in 2019. And I just remember drinking that in as much as possible. I just remember I'm going to take every moment of this situation and enjoy it because I worked my ass off and I got here. They called me. You know, I was really insecure for a long time, and I had a friend who talked me out of a tree, actually a good friend of ours, Chad Bernstein. He said, look, man, they called you, dude. He's like, you're doing what you're doing. They wouldn't have called you if you didn't deserve to be there. Like, you deserve to be there. Just go be you. Go show yourself. And I was like, yeah, like, that's all I have to do is just go be myself. And it was such a magical experience. I had so many friends come there and visit. You were there, and like family came. My Portuguese family came because there's a lot of Portuguese in the area, so that was really rewarding. It was a great program. I got to do a lot of classics. I got to do a lot of crossover. I did even some music of Sam's. it was literally the pinnacle and highlight of my musical career, and it just felt like such a moment. So I think those are two of the biggest ones for me.
Awesome. That's awesome. Okay, let's talk about Turn of the Screw a little bit. I'm so excited that you will be conducting. And let's tell me, have you done a lot of opera?
Well, I think you know the answer to that question, Ms. Kreider. Little trick question over there. I have not done I have not done a full production of an opera. No. I have studied a lot of opera, and in fact, when I went back to conducting school, I was at the Peabody Institute, and at the time they had a program with the Baltimore Opera, which is since defunct, unfortunately, but at the time it was a really reputable opera. So I did assist on a couple of big productions. I got to conduct an act of Madame Butterfly and a Sitzprobe. I did some opera scenes and readings and conducting at the Aspen Institute, or excuse me, at the Aspen Music School for a couple summers under Spano, who was a big mentor of mine, a huge opera guy too as well. So I got to dip my toe in, and it was really something I loved, because the thing about opera that I like, and which, of course, that's why Laine is here, and that's why I think we're all together, is that it incorporates so many artistic elements. And I love that. I love combining things to create something different, special, new, and unique. And I love the orchestra, but I just think the opera is such a powerful way to express every emotion we could possibly think of and express it in a very direct and fundamental human way. And I've never been able to experience that in a real production. And at the end of the day, the conductor in a symphony concert is the person on the podium. It's the center of gravity. It's the attention. The drama's on stage in an opera, and the conductor is a part of a bigger picture. The conductor is important, no doubt, and has a huge voice in the artistic performance, but you're just part of a bigger collaboration. And I love that. I love collaborating with people. I love getting ideas from others. I love being pushed in new directions. I love challenging myself in new artistic ways. And so opera has always been something another itch I've been wanting to scratch. It's hard to break into it, because it's like, you can't conduct an opera unless you've done opera, but you can't do an opera unless you conduct an opera. So it's like, you have to kind of, work it. And what I've been lucky enough to do is work with a lot of great singers, including you and others, both here in Amarillo and the new Deco, doing music that's new music, that's avant-garde music, that's classic music. So I've had a lot of experience doing opera scenes. I got to work with Mary Jane Johnson, one of the greatest opera singers of all time, who sang with Pavarotti for years and years. She's actually here in Amarillo. We did a big opera scenes production here in Amarillo. So again, dipping my toe, and now I was dipping my foot, and now I was getting down to my ankles and knees. I was like kind of wading around the waters. But I've been trying to get to this place, and I finally was able to meet with you about this project, and it sounded so exciting, and it's you, and I trust you artistically, and I think your vision is so incredible, and you're such an artist of repute as yourself, that I just knew that if you were asking me to do this, that it was going to be something really special. So luckily here I am, and getting to do my first major opera, and I couldn't have asked for a better jumping off point to dive in.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really wonderful. We have an awesome comment on Facebook, and it says, Joe says, always fun and refreshing to have a mind and ear and soul on the podium that bring a different viewpoint to opera. So that's a really wonderful, it's like a fresh take on the experience. And this will be a really, as you said, collaborative experience with New Deco, Vizcaya, National Young Arts Foundation. It's a community sourced project, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. That excites me as well. The fact that we're bringing in so many different members of the community, so many different members of the Miami community. Vizcaya is just ridiculous. I mean, such a beautiful place. The music is incredible. I'm so excited to work with Laine. Her pedigree and her artistry is just amazing. I hope I get to meet her cat one day. You, Amanda, just amazing. There, oh, look at that little kitty. And then, just it's all out of the box, and that's what I love. I love being a little more on the edgy side. I love being a little more on the out of the box side. I love that we're incorporating technology in a very visceral and compelling way. That to me is exciting. Is adding these 21st century elements into the dynamic and beautiful orchestral world. And we have to do that. We have to push the art forward. And I think that's what you do, and that's what IlluminArts is all about. And it's just moving those chains forward to like really bring in the future and embrace the future. And that's how we stay relevant. That's how we are relevant. People used to make fun of Mozart. They said, you can't put pizzicati in music. You're not meant to pick a string. I mean, that's ridiculous, you know,
Oh,
or
yeah.
like Vivaldi, you know, like he did these massive like octaves on the violin, these octaves. They were like, that's impossible. You shouldn't do that. Or Beethoven's tempi. These are too crazy. They're too fast. Or Wagner, for example, combining all these things into this new art. And then you look at someone in the future like Mason Bates or something like that, combining technology. We have to keep pushing the art form forward to make it relevant and to make it special and to just really keep an excitement about it, which is, I think, the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're gonna hear, it's 8:25, so I know you need to run to rehearsal, but
Yeah, I got about 1 more minute. Yeah.
okay, I wanted you to just give us a little intro to the music we're gonna hear from New Deco Ensemble, which is Holly Harrison's
Oh,
And Whether Pigs
yes,
Fly.
yes. When pigs will, when what it's a crazy title. When
And
pigs
whether pigs have wings.
will fly. Yeah, and whether pigs have wings. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's based off C.S. Lewis, the nonsensical poems of C.S. Lewis, and it features. She was the winner of the New Deco New Works Initiative. She submitted her music. She adapted for the ensemble. We performed it a couple of years ago with Jessica Jones, who was someone you introduced us to, who like won a Grammy like the week before she performed with us for her work with Mason Bates and the opera out there. And so, yeah, it's a really cool genre-bending piece that infuses jazz, rock, and it's based off these nonsensical poems. So there's moments of the music that's nonsensical as well, but in a really kind of cool and crafty way. And Holly is just such a unique voice, such a fun, sprightly individual, and you can really hear her personality in this music.
Yeah, it's so awesome. It's 10 minutes long, so we can't hear the whole thing tonight, but I wanted to play a little bit of it. Jessica's
Sure.
an incredible singer. She was in a female force with IlluminArts back in 2016 and just really amazing. So Giacomo, before we start the music, I just want to say thank you for being here and sharing with us, and can't wait for October. So thank you so much. And here's some music of New
Me
Deco
too.
Ensemble.
It's going to be super exciting.
Yeah. Thanks, Giacomo.
Thank you, guys. Ciao. Bye.
Ciao.
I'm going to share my screen and we will hear some of New Deco Ensemble.
The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all its might, and this was odd because it was the middle of the night. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said it would be grand. Boris Carpenter with pepper and vinegar, pigs with wings. Oh, his might. And this was all because it was the middle of the night. On the beach where they walk, there are oysters who enjoy pleasant talks. The sea was as red sand, as dry as could be. No clouds in the sky. No birds, there were no birds left to fly. No birds left in the cloudless sky. If 7 maids with 7 dogs swept in for half a year, will they still get their pay? Or would they shed all their tears? If 7 maids with 7 bobs, 7 bobs, 7, 7, 7 bobs. If 7 maids with 7 bobs, 7 bobs, 7, 7, 7 bobs. So
I think that's such a fun piece.
Oh my God, yeah.
Isn't it incredible?
Oh my God, Holly Harrison is incredible.
Yeah, and Jessica Jones also incredible, new Deco, amazing.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah.
incredible.
So Laine, so
Hi.
nice to talk to you, and maybe your cat also.
I know, they keep popping in.
Good. Okay, so now I'm excited to get to know some of this about you that I don't know already also. Like where you're from originally. And I know you've done like a number of creative things in your career. If you just want to give us like a Cliff Notes version of your path to this point, that would be awesome.
Of course, I would love to. I was born in Kansas. Yeah, very traditional, but then moved to Colorado, Boulder. So grew up in a much more untraditional, sort of very musical background. I played piano, classical piano from 6 to 16 and violin from 6 to about 14. So in an orchestra, and then sang in a choir for the majority of that time as well. So huge classical background in music. And then I went to NYU for directing, stage directing. And it was kind of like an ill fit in some ways because I wasn't in love with staging plays. And it wasn't until I had been assisting in theater after I'd graduated when I was probably about 24. And it was the first opera I'd ever assistant directed on. And it was for Evan Zaporin and their piece, A House in Bali. And it was this incredibly beautiful work where there was a full, there was both an orchestra and singers from Bali. There was a like this incredible moving set that transferred between Berkeley, Boston, and then BAM Music Hall. And it was at BAM when they were like taking a break during rehearsal, during the lunch rehearsal, and Evan Zaporin's band Bang on a Can was playing Steve Reich's Music for 18 Musicians because they were going to play a concert later on, which was one of my favorite pieces ever. And I was like, 24 and like lying in the hall in BAM, looking at the ceiling and listening to this music and being like, why would I ever, ever, ever not do something with music involved? And it was that moment that I was like, okay, first opera I ever got to assistant direct, and this is all I ever want to do. Because of this incredible ability for music to just enter you, affect you or me, and completely complicate or change not only your emotional quality towards the world, but it feels like your physicality, for me at least. And that ability for music to not only be emotional, but also to inspire dramaturgy, dramatics, plot, to make you feel something that someone else is feeling, to inspire empathy, became everything I was interested in staging on stage. And that really led me to pivot into a career that was only focused on opera.
Wow, awesome. And some of the companies you've worked with. Like I know you worked with Loft Opera quite a bit.
Right.
And your productions for Loft were very creative. Can you tell us some of the things that you did there?
Yeah, of course. I went and saw Loft, one of Loft's productions. I think I saw there first, and then wrote immediately to their producer saying, "Can you, if you, I swear to God, if you let me direct for you, it's going to be amazing." Because when I saw them, there was no costumes and no set. And it was this incredible energy, though, of a full orchestra from Manus there and a wonderful audience that was so receptive and so interested in the vibrancy of what opera could do. And so I wrote to them saying, if you will collaborate with me, I would love to add this other level of production to the ensemble, to the works that you're doing. And so we did La Boheme as the first production we did together. And it was a wonderful sort of hybrid, strange, unusual collaboration because I was really interested. And so was the producers. So we're the producers in bringing in contemporary culture. So we worked with Philip Lim, who is a designer, to not only take their spring line. So it was the spring line of, I think it was like 2014 maybe. But they lent us their line for spring and we costumed the majority of the opera from that and then worked with a magazine as well to not only photograph it for Grey Magazine, to have this kind of like integration into fashion as well as staged photographs, but to then use Philip Lim and their advertising campaigns to sort of bring it into the advertising role on that end too. Wow. So it was both fashion and felt very kind of like gritty and raw, as well as the very beginnings of bringing in sort of in film. We had a film lighting designer do the lighting for the stage design. It was a very, very minimal stage design that was done by ABC Carpet and Home. But it was this kind of like mid-20s, how do you get it done without spending any money but have it look amazing? Can you have a company bring in and donate their line, their architecture, their space, their time? We had the benches from the New York City fashion, the fall fashion week. We had them donate their benches. So it was this kind of like crazy collaborative effort with people who had resources where they weren't using them that we were able to take advantage of to bring together. And it was freezing. It was a bohème in which you brought in your coats, you sat down, you were freezing, you were cold. You felt this kind of like Brooklyn, New York sensation of poverty and what the characters are sort of experiencing throughout, which is the inability to have healthcare, to be able to afford living inside of the city. So that kind of began our collaboration. And then I became their resident director for 5 years until the company ceased to exist. But with them, I was doing about 3 productions a year. And we were focusing on classics. So, I mean, it was an incredible education as well as opportunity and so much fun.
Yeah.
Because part of our mission was very much to bring in young singers to try and do things that were a little bit adjacent to the way that other people were approaching classics. And it became sort of like an unspoken rule to think about what the Met was producing at the same time that we were, and to sort of have compare and contrast productions with the Met.
Wow. Bold.
Silly.
Silly. That's awesome. And you just touched on it briefly, but I know your visual art practice, you have a lot of film involved, and I know that your opera productions often involve film. And we are going to be doing that with Turn of the Screw. So can you talk a little bit about that kind of incorporating film and live video?
Absolutely. Incorporating live film was something that I've been interested in since I was an undergrad. And it was a component that I really immediately wanted to bring into Loft. And I think in our third production, which was Rape of Lucretia, we had a 7-camera with 1 live operator, sort of using that to illustrate the main components of that work, which is super complicated. I think that when Loft came to me and said, let's do Rape of Lucretia, my immediate response was, I never ever want to direct this work. It's too on the nose. The way that Britain has orchestrated it is so complicated because literally 1/5 of the work is a scene that is so complicated to direct as a female. And one way that I then came to terms with it or wanted to engage it was to say, okay, what if we create a structure in which an audience is going to perpetually be faced with the fact that they're watching a staged image? And film in particular is such an incredible medium for allowing an audience to both come into an image and then also be understanding that they're being faced with an image or alienated by an image. Because you're able to, with video, really both subsume consciousness and draw someone in, and then also show somebody that they are seeing something that's mediated and created at the same time. And that work in particular was one that I really enjoyed, because rather than going into a process thinking this is going to be incredibly complicated to deal with this particular material for 3 months at a time, it became such a the only word that comes to mind is like a liberatory process, but it was, I think, for both the woman, Kristen Gornstein, who was playing Lucretia, and as well Tarquinius, the people who were playing inside of the opera as well, because everybody was trying to engage and subsume themselves in these roles that are so morally and ethically complicated. But being able to know that your character is shown in 2 ways gives you, I think, somewhat of a permission to say, okay, I can be completely a villain. I can show the worst parts of my character and know that on some level, the camera is capturing me in both lights, that I am both Tarquinius and I'm also the actor playing Tarquinius. So that was a really unusual experience for me as a director, to see how far we could push sort of the 4th wall inside of that piece. And right before I had directed that, which was, I was directing The Barber of Seville, which is one of the most complicated pieces for me dramaturgically as well, because it's inescapable. It's so funny. It's so compact. It is such a great opera, and it's so complicated dramaturgically, because at its core, it's about essentially a stepfather trying to marry his stepdaughter on a certain level, which is like, oh my God.
When we think about these things in modern day terms, it's like,
I know, and you're like, okay, how do I make this okay? How do I make this a part of reality right now? And it was directing that opera, though, that I was like, I have to go back to grad school. I have to go and study how to do film. I have to go and think about how do I stage my own narratives in order to be able to bring that sort of freedom into as well. So I went back to school after I'd been in opera and directing opera for a number of years, and went back to sort of really study digital arts and study how to like flesh out narrative. And then also on the other side, how to take opera and translate it into visual art, and how to think about the components about performance and sort of be able to striate it or break it apart into its individual facets in order to sort of highlight what I was interested in, which was a great exercise in thinking through, in performance, when I'm staging it, are there moments that you can kind of like tease apart and allow for the character to stand aside of the actor and vice versa? And when does that help an opera, and when is it hindering? Because sometimes it does, but it was a desire to really marry both visual art and that kind of freedom that exists inside of the visual arts when it's in a gallery setting, and then also to marry stage design, stagecraft, stage direction with this capacity of breaking apart and really critiquing the text of an opera.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to digest, and it's interesting that you started that whole section about talking about another one of Benjamin Britten's operas, The Rape of Lucretia,
Yeah.
and I love that we're also doing Britten opera, The Turn of the Screw. I actually have sung in The Rape of Lucretia, and the characters, as you were describing, it just took me back because they are so complex, and it's so interesting to be able to see from two perspectives, from the film perspective and the live person on stage perspective. And you can see more complexity that way, I would imagine. And so I'm thrilled that we're using film in this production as well. Can you describe a little bit for our audience what Vizcaya will look like during the performance?
You mean besides just beautiful?
Besides just beautiful, like why is Vizcaya the perfect setting for this, and how are we going to use it in the production?
Vizcaya is, I mean, I literally could not picture a more beautiful, more perfect setting for Benjamin Britten's Turn of the Screw. It is, for the governess, I mean, it is the most incredible space to walk into. It is a scenic design in itself, and it is in so many ways a complicated and wonderfully lush opportunity, because it is not what it seems. It's a facade of a different time. It's a mock-up. It is a scenic design of this like extreme wealth in Venice, of this incredible aristocracy, which it is too. But it's almost like the frescoes, as we talked about before, are interpreting or trying to reproduce a particular type of moment and sensation and elegance that doesn't quite match up with the reality of it. And I think that in particular is such an interesting moment to enter in as the governess, to come into the mansion with this kind of desire for perfection. She has such an incredible obsession with or desire for perfection in my mind. And this, like,
just interject that the governess is the lead character in The Turn of the Screw, for those who don't know the piece already. Yeah.
Yes. And then when she encounters Flora and Miles, the two children, they have this also incredibly complicated relationship to their position in life, which is far more worldly in some ways, as we talked about. Also that they have this capacity. I mean, they're being played by people who are not the same age as the characters traditionally inside of the book, inside of the story. And I think that it fits almost perfectly, because there's this bifurcation between what we see and sort of what the characters are experiencing, in the sense that their age might be like, pre-teenager or prepubescent, but their experiences as characters are far beyond that. And the extreme wealth inside of which they live, and as well as having no supervision, because the governess's employer is never present. There's this kind of contradiction inside of their world. And so I think that this state, the Vizcaya estate, is also so rich with history and so rich with its own personal story, that I think that overlaying that on top of Benjamin Britten's incredibly rich story is going to just going to like add layers and layers and layers.
Yeah. And something that I think is a little bit on the nose for IlluminArts producing this at Vizcaya on Halloween is that it's a ghost story. So
it's too good.
It couldn't be more perfect that we get to experience this opera in this incredible estate on Halloween.
And through video.
Yes, and through video, yeah.
But that's like, video is one of the most manipulative and like fascinating and facile pieces of technology to work with, because we're able to show you know, dual image, or to be able to show past and present at the same time. I mean, I think that the video that you wanted to interject inside of this piece is such a brilliant idea, Amanda, because it is so about the ability to collapse both time and space. Video allows us to manipulate those two things so well. And I think that your impulse to want to bring that into Turn of the Screw is so fantastic, because the opera wants to show sort of like the past and the present at the same moment in time.
So the courtyard of Vizcaya will be, for those of you who have been to Vizcaya, maybe you can picture this. It will be where the audience will be sitting, and also we will have a very large, as large as we can get, LED screen that will be projecting both pre-recorded film, live video that's being shot during the performance of the performers, and historical photographs of Vizcaya all woven together. And I have to say, the historical photographs of Vizcaya are incredible. They are, some of them are when Vizcaya is still being built in process, and they're all, some of them are sepia toned. It adds to the element of the ghost story to have those historical photographs also involved in the film that will be projected behind the performers as they're performing. So I think it's going to be, the Vizcaya's courtyard will be transformed, and it will be wonderful to fill that space with this music. And what other elements have I missed that we should talk about with the production that we're planning so far? Are you thinking of incorporating the gardens?
Yeah,
costume thrown around?
Yeah, we are hoping to incorporate this sort of ability to cross time and space, as well, not only in the video, but as well inside of the costumes. So the costumes, and we are hoping to engage a number of other performers as supernumeraries to play the staff as well. So we'll have a much broader cast being able to sort of flow through the space and through the audience, performing somewhat, not entirely dance, but both sort of physical motion as well as acting as ancillaries inside of the scenes. But the costumes will kind of follow a similar sensation, where some of them will be referencing older or historical design, and some of them will be incredibly contemporary, so that layering of history kind of plays through not only with the characters, because some of the, like we talked about before, some of the storyline, some of the different ways in which characters act is very based inside of past moments in time. So that will be showing through in the way that characters are costumed. Mm-hmm. And also, it kind of adds this moment of being able to have ghosts or characters from the past really be physicalized and looking as though they're a part of the past as well. And I think that it's almost like it's such an opportunity to kind of match the costumes with the color, the fabrics, this like incredibly lush design that already exists inside of Vizcaya, where both contemporary couture will look just gorgeous, but also kind of matching the fabrics or matching the design to the actual site will look magnificent as well.
Yeah. And both Laine and I are very excited because we have the most amazing designer on board, Cynthia Cali-Virga.
She's incredible.
She's a Miami-based artist who will be designing the costumes. And if we will include her website in the chat. She's just amazing. And we've just started preliminary talks with her. Cannot wait to see what she comes up with for the costumes here. Well, Laine, I can't believe it, already almost out of time. I know, but I'm so happy to have this little teaser of our production and for our audience to get to know you, because often we don't get to see the director behind the scenes and get to hear about your concepts and ideas and just about your own process and your artistic path. But before we end tonight, I do want to play the trailer of your most recent production, La Boheme, and set this up for us before.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much. Also, before you do that, I wanted to thank you, Amanda, because it is true that it's such an opportunity to get to talk to you about what I'm thinking about and my past too. So thank you very much. This clip that you're going to show is a trailer from La Boheme that is a co-production between More Than Musical, which is a company in Hong Kong, Opera Omaha, and Tri-Cities Opera, that we came together to create this filmic version of La Boheme during COVID. And it is going to be premiering on Opera Box in June. But first, it's going to be at the Japanese International Film Festival. So it's going to be doing both like a film festival route as well as an opera route, which is exciting for us.
That is exciting to be reaching all kinds of different audiences. That's awesome. So we're going to play the trailer now and then come back and just wrap up. So here we go. I wish I could see the whole thing.
You will.
I can't wait to see the whole thing. That's wonderful. And it's so, we've all had to be creative in this time of COVID and the ways we create art. And I think it's incredible that you've produced this new production of La Boheme as a film. I think it's wonderful. Yeah, we're all doing what we can to continue to make art, and I think that's really wonderful. So
Completely.
Thank you to you, Laine, for being here tonight, and also to everyone who has watched online. Please join us in October for the Turn of the Screw at Vizcaya on October 28th and 31st, just in time for Halloween. And I think maybe we'll have a costume party on Halloween as well. Why not? Everyone can come in costume. And thank you to everyone who has joined us this season with IlluminArts Online, and for continuing to support all of the arts organizations in your own communities and in Miami this year, when we've all had to just try our best to make art when we can't do it in person. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Laine. And I hope you all have a wonderful night and a wonderful summer, and we will see you in October. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.